Have you ever noticed how The Last of Us and Uncharted just feel connected? The tone, the world building, even the way characters talk and react, it all has this strange familiarity. And it makes you wonder, what if they actually are connected? What if the world of Nathan Drake, full of lost cities, ancient curses, and mysterious relics, eventually became the same world where Joel and Ellie fight to survive in The Last of Us? It might sound crazy at first, but when you start looking at the details, the idea doesn't seem that far-fetched. In fact, there are more connections between these two series than most players realize. So tonight, let's dive deep into one of gaming's most intriguing what-ifs. What if The Last of Us and Uncharted existed in the same universe? Let's start with the obvious. Both games were created by Naughty Dog, which means they share not only creative DNA, but even technology, art teams, and writers. That alone explains some of the visual and thematic similarities. The world feels cohesive because it was built by the same hands. But Naughty Dog also loves to leave Easter eggs. In Uncharted 3, Drake's Deception, released 2 years before The Last of Us, there's a newspaper in a London bar with a headline that reads, "Scientists are still struggling to understand deadly fungus." Sound familiar? That's almost exactly what happens in The Last of Us. A parasitic fungus mutates, infects humans, and spreads uncontrollably across the world. At the time Uncharted 3 came out, The Last of Us hadn't even been announced yet. That means Naughty Dog intentionally placed that headline as a hidden teaser. But the existence of that newspaper inside Nathan Drake's world opens up an interesting possibility. What if the Cordyceps outbreak didn't just happen in a different world? What if it happened in the same one, years later? Let's think about the timelines. Uncharted 4 takes place around the mid-2010s. The Last of Us begins in 2013, right when the outbreak hits. If you line those up, it's possible the Cordyceps pandemic started right around the time Nathan Drake was finally stepping away from his life of treasure hunting. In the epilogue of Uncharted 4, we see Nate, Elena, and their daughter Cassie living a peaceful life by the ocean, years after they've retired. It's an idyllic ending, calm, quiet, and normal. But imagine this, somewhere on the other side of the country, the Cordyceps infection begins spreading. People panic, governments collapse, communication shuts down. At first, it's just rumors, strange illnesses, people acting violent. Maybe Nate and Elena think it's just another media panic, something far away. But slowly, the infection spreads, and their world, this calm, modern paradise they've built, begins to crumble. That would mean the ending of Uncharted 4 might not be a permanent peace, but the calm before The Last of Us. If both stories exist in the same universe, then it's fascinating to imagine what happened to the people and locations we know from Uncharted once the outbreak hit. Think about all those exotic places Drake explored, the ruins in Madagascar, the ship graveyard, the hidden pirate colony of Libertalia. Those are the kinds of isolated, resource-rich areas that would be perfect for survivors in a post-apocalyptic world. It's easy to picture future survivors scavenging through the remains of Libertalia, finding clues about the long-lost treasures and battles that Drake once uncovered. And what about Drake himself? Nate was always good at surviving the impossible, but could even he endure a world where civilization itself has fallen apart? Maybe he'd protect his family at all costs, turning into a hardened survivor like Joel. Maybe he wouldn't make it. Or maybe his daughter Cassie would grow up in this new, infected world. It's a chilling thought, Cassie Drake becoming one of the survivors decades later, the same way Ellie became the new generation after everything fell apart. Beyond the timeline and Easter eggs, there's something deeper tying Uncharted and The Last of Us together, their themes. Both stories explore humanity, morality, and the cost of survival, but they do it from opposite ends of the same spectrum. In Uncharted, Nathan Drake is the adventurer. He risks his life for discovery, fortune, and legacy. The world around him is still intact, even though it's full of greed and conflict. His journey is about finding meaning in adventure and redemption for his past. In The Last of Us, Joel and Ellie exist in the ashes of that same world. Civilization's greed and obsession with power have already destroyed everything. Their journey isn't about legacy or treasure, it's about holding on to something human when everything else is gone. It's like Uncharted shows the world before the fall, and The Last of Us shows what happens after. The stories fit together almost too perfectly, one ends where the other begins. Even the worlds themselves seem connected. In both series, the environments are heavily overgrown with vegetation. Abandoned ruins, cities reclaimed by nature, collapsed structures. It's a visual theme that runs deep in both games. The difference is context. In Uncharted, nature overtakes ancient civilizations. In The Last of Us, nature overtakes our civilization. You can almost imagine that the overgrown skyscrapers Joel and Ellie explore in Boston or Seattle were once the same kinds of bustling cities Nathan Drake might have visited years before. The same streets, the same landmarks, just decades apart. And then there's the feeling of discovery. Uncharted is all about exploring the past through relics and ruins, learning what happened to people long gone. The Last of Us does the same thing, but with a tragic twist. Instead of pirates and explorers, Ellie uncovers the stories of ordinary people who didn't survive the end of the world. It's two sides of the same coin, adventure and aftermath. Here, where the theory gets really interesting. In Uncharted, we've seen all kinds of ancient diseases, supernatural artifacts and experiments gone wrong, everything from the El Dorado curse to the Shambhala resin. Many of these objects caused mutations, hallucinations, or even death. What if the cordyceps infection from The Last of Us wasn't new at all? What if it was something ancient, something buried, forgotten, and rediscovered during one of Drake's adventures? Imagine Drake or another explorer accidentally uncovering a dormant strain of the fungus. Maybe it was locked away for centuries, sealed in a tomb or temple, and their greed for discovery unleashed it into the modern world. That would tie the two stories together perfectly. The adventurous, curious world of Uncharted accidentally creating the apocalypse we see in The Last of Us. A treasure hunter's greatest find becomes humanity's downfall. If the two worlds really were one, it would be a hauntingly beautiful timeline. First, you'd have the Uncharted era, a world full of mystery, exploration, and forgotten civilizations. Humanity at its most curious, but also at its most reckless. Then comes the outbreak, a collapse triggered by that same reckless curiosity. The age of adventure gives way to the age of survival. By the time The Last of Us begins, the heroes of old are long gone. Their treasures, ruins, and legacies are buried under vines and dust, their stories reduced to whispers and broken artifacts. The same greed that drove explorers like Drake has now doomed the entire species. And maybe, just maybe, the ruins Joel and Ellie wander through are the same places Nathan Drake once stood, the same walls, the same artifacts, only now covered in mold and silence. It's a haunting image, the world of wonder turned into the world of ruin. So what if The Last of Us and Uncharted really did exist in the same universe? It wouldn't just be a cool crossover, it would be poetic. One story about humanity at its height, chasing legacy and fortune. The other about humanity at its lowest, fighting for love and survival. Two worlds separated not by imagination, but by time, by a single mistake that turned adventure into apocalypse. And maybe that's the true connection between the two. Both are about what makes us human, our endless curiosity, our greed, our capacity for love, and the consequences of our choices. Because if you think about it, it's not hard to believe that the same world that birthed Nathan Drake could also give rise to Joel and Ellie. After all, one man's discovery might just be another man's end. If you like this theory and want to see more deep dives into video game lore and what-if universes, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what crossover world would you want to see next?